I had been living in that house for a little over a year when everything started happening. It wasn't anything special, just a small two-bedroom place on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. The kind of street where people kept to themselves, where porch lights flicked off one by 10 p.m., and where nothing ever really happened. That's why I noticed the first knock. It was late, sometime around 9:30. I had just finished eating and was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone when I heard 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the front door. Not loud, not aggressive, just intentional. I remember pausing, waiting for a follow-up, maybe someone calling out or knocking again, but nothing came. The house went completely still. I got up and walked toward the door, more confused than anything. I wasn't expecting anyone. I never did. There was no peephole, which always bothered me a little, so I checked the front window instead. I pulled the curtain back just enough to look out. No one was there. The porch was empty. The driveway was empty. The street beyond was quiet, lit only by a few dim streetlights. I stood there for a few seconds longer than I should have, scanning the yard, expecting someone to step out from behind the bushes or call out from the sidewalk, but nothing happened. Eventually, I shrugged it off. I told myself it was probably just someone at the wrong house, or maybe even a sound carrying from somewhere else. I went back to the couch and forgot about it. Until the next night. This time it was 4 knocks. Same time, same pattern, slow and deliberate. I froze as soon as I heard it, my eyes snapping toward the door. There was no mistaking it. Someone was there. I didn't move right away. I just sat there, listening, waiting for more. After a few seconds, there were 2 more knocks, slightly louder. I got up again, more cautious this time, and went to the window. I pulled the curtain back. There was a man standing on my porch. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, facing the door. He looked normal enough, mid-30s maybe, average build, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood down. What stood out was how still he was. I tapped lightly on the glass to get his attention. His head turned slowly toward me, like he'd been expecting me to look. I cracked the window open just enough to speak. "Can I help you?" He stepped closer to the door but didn't look directly at me anymore. Instead, he kept his eyes on the wood, like he was reading something only he could see. "I think I have the wrong house," he said. His voice was calm, flat. "What are you looking for?" I asked. He hesitated for a second. Then he said a name I didn't recognize. I told him no one by that name lived there. He nodded slowly, like that confirmed something for him, then turned and walked off the porch. I watched him go. He didn't get into a car, didn't check his phone. He just walked down the driveway, turned at the street, and disappeared into darkness. Something about it felt off. But again, I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. People make mistakes. The third night, I didn't get a knock. And strangely, that bothered me more. I caught myself glancing at the clock around the same time, waiting, listening. Nothing happened. I went to bed thinking maybe it was over. It wasn't. The fourth night, the knock didn't come from the front door. It came from the side of the house. 3 sharp taps against the window in the dining room. I was in the kitchen when it happened, just a few feet away. I actually flinched when I heard it, the sound so sudden and out of place that it sent a jolt through me. I turned slowly toward the window. The blinds were closed. For a second, I just stood there, staring at them, waiting for movement on the other side. Then, another 3 taps. This time slower. More deliberate. I stepped closer, my heart starting to pound. "Hello?" I called out. No response. I reached out and tilted one of the blinds open just enough to see outside.
there was no one there. But the yard felt wrong. I can't explain it any better than that. It was like the space just beyond the glass felt occupied, even though I couldn't see anyone. I backed away from the window. That's when the front door knock came, louder than before. 4 hard knocks that echoed through the house. I jumped and turned toward the hallway, my pulse racing now. I didn't cover the door this time. Instead, I stood in the kitchen, listening. Another knock. Then another. Then silence. I waited for what felt like minutes, barely breathing. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I crept toward the front window and carefully pulled the curtain aside. The porch was empty. But as I scanned the yard, my eyes caught something across the street. A figure standing near the tree line. It was him. Even from that distance, I recognized the shape of his body, the way he stood. He wasn't moving, just watching the house. I let the curtain fall back into place and stepped away. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a coincidence. The next day, I installed a couple of cheap security cameras, one facing the front door, one covering the side of the house. Nothing fancy, just enough to give innocent peace of mind. That night, I kept all the lights off. I sat in my bedroom with the door closed, watching the camera feeds on my phone. Right on time, he showed up. I saw him walk into frame on the front camera. Same clothes, same slow, deliberate movements. He stepped on the porch and knocked. 4 times. Then he waited. I stayed completely still, barely even breathing. After a few seconds, he knocked again. Then again. When I didn't respond, he stepped back. But instead of leaving, he turned his head slightly and looked directly at the camera. My stomach dropped. He stood there for a few seconds, staring straight into the lens, like he knew exactly where it was. Then he smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a slight curve of the lips. And then he walked off the porch. I switched to the side camera just in time to see him move along the side of the house. He stopped near the dining room window, the same window from the night before. And then, he leaned in close, so close that his face filled the frame. He didn't knock this time. He just stood there, staring inside. I turned off my phone. I couldn't watch anymore. A few minutes later, I heard something at the back of the house. A faint rattling sound, like someone testing a door handle. I grabbed my phone and called the police. I tried to keep my voice steady as I explained what was happening, but I could hear the panic creeping in. While I was on the call, the noise stopped. Everything went silent. Too silent. The officers arrived about 10 minutes later. They searched the property but didn't find anyone. But they did find something else. Fresh scratches on the back door, right near the lock, like someone had been trying to pry it open. That night, I didn't sleep. The following evening, I decided not to stay in the house. I packed a bag and went to a friend's place across town. I didn't post anything, didn't tell anyone besides my friend. I just left. Around 9:30, my phone buzzed. It was my neighbor. He asked if I was home. I told him no. There was a pause. Then he said, "There's a guy on your porch." My chest tightened. "He's been knocking for a while," he added, just standing there. I told him to call the police immediately. He stayed on the line with me while we waited. He described everything as it was happening. "He's not leaving," he said at one point. "He's just standing there." A few minutes later, he said, "Wait, he's moving." My grip on the phone tightened. "Where?" I asked. There was another pause. Then he said, "He's going around the side of your house." That's when I realized. He knew. He knew I wasn't there. The police showed up shortly after. This time they caught him. When they searched him, they found a small toolkit in his backpack. Braille tools, gloves, a flashlight, and a list. A handwritten list of addresses. Mine was circled. During questioning, he admitted to everything. He would knock on doors late at night, pretending to be lost or looking for someone. If someone answered, he marked the house as occupied and moved on. If no one answered after repeated visits, he assumed the house was empty. Then he came back later. But what unsettled me the most was what he said next. Sometimes he would keep coming back, even if someone answered, just to see if the pattern changed, just to see if they stopped answering. Because eventually, People get tired. Eventually, they ignore it. And that's when he knew. I moved out a month later. I didn't wait for the lease to end. I didn't feel safe there anymore. Even now, I still think about those nights. About the knocking. About the way he stood there just watching. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I swear I hear it again. Slow, deliberate, waiting for me to answer.